Thank you, Eric, for the time and invited me here to join with GDG Kuala Lumpur. And also thank you for Google Developer Space to giving us also a platform to share these things with other developer out there. So I'd like to introduce first about myself. So my name is Yohan Totting. I'm from Indonesia. I've been in KL a couple of times. I don't remember how many times already. But yeah, it's been a long, I think, like 2 years ago, the last time I was there. You can find me in Twitter with T Johan, and I'm a web developer advocate, part of the web developer team in Google. And today I like to share the things with you about e-commerce best practices, but I will be focused more around the identity and payment, just like Eric mentioned. So what is this about? So we're gonna talk more about the best practices, especially on the front end side. So we're not gonna talk about the whole identity and payment process. So this is just a tips and trick how we can handle the user journey and the flow in e-commerce, especially focus on those two. Because I think it's very important. If we think about build e-commerce, I think we need to taking care of the user experience on the web. So we're not covering about security or maybe the backend services or like identity management and this kind of stuff. We've called focusing on the front end side, basically as a web developer, what you can do to build a good user experience for your users. Focus on sign in, sign up, and also in the checkout process. So let's start. So if you not familiar with the e-commerce, so this is how the general e-commerce funnel. Uh, Usually this is we call also like a user journey. So it's like step by step how a user come into e-commerce website and then do a transaction. What kind of steps they are taking to finish the transaction until they pay the product. So as you see there, the first step, the first three steps, it's more about convincing the users to buy the product. So maybe the user who come to the e-commerce website, they not really think to buy something. They just like maybe they find like a ad on Instagram or social media, and then they just click that one, and then they landed on this e-commerce website. So in these three steps, we're not gonna cover about that part, but we're gonna cover more on the last two because the last two it's super important because this is mean someone already got convinced that they want to buy the product on this e-commerce website, and we want to make sure they not get away because got distracted or the experience is not that good and they basically doesn't able to complete the transaction. So that's we're gonna cover basically on that area. So take a look on the sign in sign up process. If you see the funnel here, it's happening before the checkout process. And from our perspective as a like a user experience tips, make sure you don't put any friction or obstacle for the user to let the user get the value directly. In this case, talking about e-commerce, user want to do transaction. If you ask them another steps before they want to do the transaction, it's another friction. So the questions here, should we really ask about this thing? So before they able to do the transaction, before they able to check out on our website, should we really need to ask them about this thing to sign in and sign up? So usually the e-commerce website, they ask the user to sign in just to make sure they can reuse the data from that user to finish transaction faster. Because if the user previously did a transaction in that website, usually they already have recorded like a shipping address and contact and those kind of stuff. and maybe also including the payment info. So the e-commerce basically asks to sign in just because they want to finish the help the user finish the transaction faster. But what if the user basically knew one? Should we ask them to sign up first? So I think you should consider to allow them not to sign up, because this is the thing. You ask user to sign up, it means you probably ask them to share their private data, like their email or their phone number or whatever identity you are using to sign up with them. And I'm not sure in Malaysia, but in Indonesia, a lot of scam happens. Someone did some kind of like a social engineering stuff. They call basically they try to sign in with your account, and then they basically call you and then pretend like I'm from the operator of the telco or operator of the app, and they pretend like they need you to do something, and please send us the token that we just handled. And for someone that doesn't know about how important the OTP or token, they usually just give away the token that they just received on their phone. And because these things, a lot of people lost their account, or they lost also the money. So now in Indonesia, a lot of people start to think if if something like a get request to provide their identity, it's something that some people think this is really hard request. So probably they want doesn't want to share that, and that means if you force them to sign up, it could be mean they think this is a friction and they don't want to continue the transaction. So this is the ideal thing that what thinking. So basically, we need to let the user check out with the guest account. So we don't need to ask them for sign up if, in the beginning. We can offer them to sign in, but only if they already did the transaction with us before. But if not, please allow them to do the transaction even without sign up an account. So basically, they just check out with the process. And then later, after they finish the transaction, then you can ask them to sign up. So you can ask them like something, hey, we just finished your transaction. If you want to have a faster transaction in the future, would you like to create an account with us? If yes, please just create the password here. That's it. So don't force them to sign up. Only offer them after they finish what the thing that they are looking for, which is do a transaction, buy the product, because then you will able to have them faster with less friction. And then if you able to request them to sign up on your app, what the best way for them to be signed up? What kind of method you can use to ask them to sign up? So there are several methods these days that we're gonna cover. So the first one I want to share, I think this is quite common these days. We call it something like a magic link. So basically, you will ask to get input your email or your phone number, and then the website will be send you a link that you can click to sign in, to sign up. Sorry. But then this thing sometimes is not really good, because you need to open another app. Means in mobile, you need to switch screen from the website into the email app or your SMS app to find the link. And that means there's a possibility that someone get distracted when they get into their email account and they find out there's another important email. They will like taking care of that one instead like continue to sign up on your website. So consider these things. It's easy, but there's a potential to get distracted whenever they switch screen. Another one, federated identity. Basically, this is usually we call also like a sign in, sign up, single sign on. So people use their social account or other account, and then basically authorize that account to connect with your website. But there's some issues also about this. If you get into the website from a social media app, it means sometimes you get the website with the in-app browser. Try this. Go to the website from a link that you find on the Twitter, for example. You will end up inside the in-app browser. And usually in iOS, the in-app browser is not sharing the session with the browser that you already have. That means even you are signed in that browser, in your phone browser, the in-app browser still think that you're not signed in into your account. So means you still need to sign in first with your social media account before able to authorize the account to that website. That means you add another friction. Another one, some people also browse the things using the private window. So means all those accounts basically is not signed up. So that means whenever you sign in them with this kind of account, they need to sign in again first with this sign up with the social media account before they're able to authorize and connect their account to your website. So please consider also this thing is still considered as not the best way to sign in people. Another one, I really like this one. I think this is one of a very popular way to sign up people in Indonesia because not everyone familiar with email, but everyone, of course, they have a phone number whenever they access into the internet. Uh, so with this one, in iOS especially, you can just easily choose that number that will appear on top of your keyboard whenever someone sends you the OTP code. Means you don't need to switch screen because you just need to like tap that one and then boom, you got the token basically input already into the token field. And the good thing in Android, you can automatically inject the SMS code into the input field whenever someone send you the token. And I think I consider this is supposed to be like an OTP token supposed to be automatic. Because if you allow users to input a token manually, that means the token could be not exist in the user phone. Sometimes the user, maybe they got social engineering stuff, they call the users, and then they pretend as that user input the token manually into that account. So if you consider a better security for this web OTP, never allow the OTP to be input manually. Only allow if that happen with this web OTP and then fill the input field automatic. And then if you want to able provide the basic input sign up process, I think this is we can consider as the most fundamental way to ask user sign up to your website. But then if we're talking about this kind of thing, it means we need to ask the user to fill the form. So that's why we're gonna talk more about form best practices. So let's start from this one. So my colleagues in Google, when they the name is Sam. So when he tried to deliver about sign in, sign up best practices for web.dev live, he asked to the Chrome identity team what he need to talk about. And then the Chrome identity team basically mentioned that you need to be provide and make the basic thing right. And if we're talking about sign up and sign in process, so basically this is the easiest one. Let's talk about form. And the basic form could be involve these four elements: form, input, label, and button. So let's see if we have this kind of form. Maybe you tempted to able do something more fancy than this, like you use div and then use the JavaScript to create your form. But this is could be an issue, especially from accessibility perspective. Sometimes the fancy form it's not able to read by the screen reader, especially if you have user with visual disability. So maybe they like have a color plane and stuff, so they're not able to, or maybe like completely blind, so maybe they're not able to see the form, so they need a tool like a screen reader to access the form. So this is one of the tip if we're talking about the basic practice for the form. So let's start with the input level. So usually, if we see the form, this form is very simple. It's very good and very easy to understand. But that if you think we as a normal person and you as a developer understand like this is supposed to be filled with first name, last name, and stuff. But imagine if you build this form with English, and I think this is very common in Indonesia. Developer built their website with English language, but then they basically targeting Indonesian users. And Indonesian users not understand all English. So usually, if we get this kind of form, you will right-click on your desktop and then try to translate this thing. But the issue, if you use this kind of form, means you are using the placeholder to as a label to let the user know what kind of data or value you need to input into that field. And the placeholder is an attribute. And by default, the browser translator, like a Google Translate, won't able to translate the attribute. Means even the title at the top, like a sign up, and it's free and always be, will be translated into Bahasa Indonesia, but the whole label inside the form won't be translated because it's attribute. Means it won't be translated. So translator only translate the text inside the element, not the attribute itself. Also, if you use placeholder as a way to let the user understand the format, this could be an issue because if you require some kind of like a format for the data, like for example the birthday, if user already input some characters, the placeholder already go. Means if they forgot what kind of a format they need to input there, they need to remove all the characters before able to see what the format they need to input. So consider to have a format not only with the placeholder, but also together with the text, like beside your label. So even they input the text already, they're still able to understand the format. So this is basically the simple way to have the input and the label. So you just need to have a label and put the for attribute linked to the ID of the input. So if you put for email, then input ID basically will be the email. And will be helpful, especially on mobile, because if you tap the label, the focus will be moved inside the input field with the same ID on that label. And also, whenever the focus get into the input field, the screen reader tool will use that one and announce that this input is email based on the label. So everyone, including the user who access your form using the screen reader, still able to understand what kind of data they need to input into that field. And sometimes we also, whenever we build a long form like this, like imagine you build like a checkout form with several input fields, you might consider, should I put side by side or should I put top and bottom? Based on our research, the users basically able to scan faster if you put the label and input vertically. So label at the top and then input at the bottom. And also it will be more consistent to have this kind of form either on screen, desktop, and also in mobile. Because usually if you have like a side-by-side input label, you will have more space to put it horizontally. Means in the mobile, maybe it will be not enough space for the screen. So having like a vertical layout will be easier because you will have a consistent layout on both screen, phone screen and also the desktop screen. And don't repeat input. I think sometimes we ask the user to input the email twice because we want to verify the user and make sure they input the email correctly. But these days, the browsers already have tons of features. For example, autocomplete. So if they enable the autocomplete, it's not necessary to ask them input twice for the same data. So if you want to verify the email, better use to send an email for verification and ask them to click the link. That's better way instead like put two input field for the same email to just to verify it's a correct one or not. And if you build some kind of like a button, please use a button element. Some users, developers, sometimes they build the button using a div element, so they can able to style and then provide some kind of like a fancy stuff for that button. But please remember, button element and div element, they have a different event. So button have a native event. Whenever you click or interact with the button will trigger a JavaScript event that able to integrate or interact with other elements, for example, with the form. But if you are using div and then trigger the event manually, it could be break some interaction with the other elements because div element doesn't have a basic native events. On whenever you click that thing, there's a like a key press or key down and key up. Those kind of stuff doesn't exist in the div element because they're not button. Also consider to have a right size, because if you use desktop, means people will interact with your website using the cursor. And cursor, of course, you can precisely click in whatever point you like. But if you use the website inside your mobile screen, you probably will use either your finger or your thumb or whatever. And the size basically will be bigger compared with your cursor. So in Android, you need to provide minimum 7 to 10 millimeter. Apple also recommend to have 48 pixel square for the minimum button size. And WWC also recommend to have 44 square CSS pixel. CSS pixel here means some screens, maybe they have a higher density pixel. So it could be like a 1 pixel in higher density pixel, could be means 2 or 4 real pixels. So please consider also to see about the density screen. And also please put padding because padding will give some extra space to the bottom. And then for the button, able to interact easily with your finger on mobile screen especially. And this is something that I really hate whenever I input the form in mobile, if the website not provide the right keyboard. So imagine something like this. If the website asks you to sign up and then input your credit card number, for example, and they provide you a alphanumeric keyboard with like a small button for the numeric button at the top, and we think it will be easier if we just have like a numeric keyboard and then easily tap the number, right? And also if you ask them to input the email and then you use the input mode attribute as an email, in the iOS, they will provide you autocomplete for the email that you already have before. So means user doesn't need to input manually the whole email. So please use these things, provide the right keyboard, especially in mobile, by utilizing the input mode attribute in the input field. And this is also you need to consider on mobile. Sometimes we as a developer, we just test our website using the, like a DevTools. So you just set your website in the mobile view, but you not consider that the keyboard basically able to overlay on top of your screen and then hiding the button or elements on your website. For example, a simple like this. So we might think this is okay, this is good. On my phone, it works okay. I can see the whole elements, including the button. But imagine if a user with a smaller screen access your website like this. So for example, if you are a developer with iPhone 11, you're able to see the whole elements, the whole form inside your screen. But then someone who use iPhone 7 and 8 could be also access your website, and they will confused because they don't see any button to submit the form over there because you hide it. So Amazon come with this way. So Amazon consider that all the user might access the website with a smaller screen. So they better ask the user to input the form just one by one instead like two input field in the same display. So with this one, they easily like a guarantee the button will be always visible in all screens, even it's smaller. And sometimes these days, people sign up to a lot of websites and then thinking about a new password sometimes is a really hard part whenever you try to create an account. So if you use the autocomplete new password, will be very helpful for the user, especially if they already use the password manager. Because if they use the password manager, means they will create a unique password for each website. And then you can help them by just generate the password for them like this. Just use the autocomplete attribute and new password, and then the user will get suggestion from Chrome or other browser as well to create the password with the random unique string. So it will be a strong password just with the autocomplete new password. And also, whenever the user trying to input with their personal data, help the user to avoid re-entering the data, be the same data that you input in other e-commerce website. So the data basically the same. We are living in one single address. Doesn't mean you sign up in one website, you will input the different shipping address. Most of the people stay in the single address and use the single address for shipping. So if you use the autocomplete like this, means the data that they are the input before will be used and then just autofill the whole form with the data that are the stored inside the browser. So it will be faster to input. And also with this autocomplete username, if you enable the sign in autocomplete on the form, uh, it will be easier because the user just need to submit the form. It will automatically fill the sign-in form with your account and also with the password. If the password are stored the data with the credential manager inside the browser. And if you ask the user to sign in, remember the autocomplete supposed to be the current password. Because if you still use the new password like before, means it could be suggest a new password. But remember, sign in, it doesn't mean we want to create a password, right? We want to user to sign in with the previous one that they already have. And this is something the user or developer forgot about this. A lot of users these days using the password manager, and they feel they want to provide like a very secure page. And sometimes this kind of thing, trying to like provide a more secure form, actually break a way for the password manager fill the form. I'll show you later. I did the survey in my Twitter. I don't know if the audience who voted into this survey only Indonesian or outside Indonesia as well. But from 1,000 voters, I got almost half of them are to use the password manager. So this means it's super important to make sure the password manager always work whenever we need to sign in into a form that we built. This is one thing that a developer trying to fix a form. So there's an incident for Starbucks Indonesia before a couple of years ago. So someone able to get into the website using other people account because basically the form is not use the HTTPS and someone using Wi-Fi able to intercept the account. So they think something that we can do is disable the copy and paste. And imagine if you are using the password manager and the password manager cannot autofill the input field of the sign-in form. And we as the user, probably we will do a copy and paste from our password manager to that form, but then you're not allowed to paste. That means you only allowed to read the strong password with combination of characters, alphanumerics, and you need to type it manually into the sign-in form. So, and that's really, really hard thing to do for the user, because it's a random characters, and it will be hard without the copy and paste things. So please don't do this. Don't disable the copy paste on the browser, because that will be make the password manager user will be hard to input the password into their account. And also, please help save user from missing inputs. Sometimes if we submit the form and then the form basically didn't submit it because maybe the network issue and other stuff, if you use the autocomplete, then the form basically will remember the data that you input before. So the data will not gone. So you're still able to have that that data inside the form, even you're not able to success submit the form. So consider these kind of things as well. And make sure you provide user a way to see if there is something wrong with the input they have, especially if you hide the input, like for example, the OTP token or maybe the password as well. So provide a way for the user to see what the input they have is a good practice. For example, in this password in Google, you have a button to click that button, and then you will see what the input you typed before. But be careful around this, because if you see, or if you use the LastPass, sometimes the LastPass button will be overlay on top of this button, and it won't be allow you to click the show password button, because it means you click the LastPass button. So please consider test with the LastPass password if you are trying to do something like this. And it's very easy actually how to show the inputs value just using the JavaScript like this. You only need to change the type attribute of the password input field from password to text. And then if you want to hide it, just toggle it and then switch over back to the password type. And also, please tell the user as early as possible if there's a constraint around the input. So for example, for the password, you want to have the minimum this lang, and then need to be like a combination of numbers and symbols. So let them know at the beginning. Don't tell them after they submit the form or they input the form, because then imagine they are thinking really hard about, oh, this is my password, and then they input and type it, and then when they press the button, and then you tell them, oh, your password is invalid, it's not allow our format, you're supposed to input like this. And this is really not best practice, right? Maybe you as a user will be blamed and then just get away from there. So one of invalid input value as early as possible, and very easy if you wanna do this, just using the HTML input field. So if you wanna validate the input field, if you wanna require some, for example, oh, it's supposed to be numeric, or it's supposed to be like in email format. So you can use these attributes just to let the user know that you require like some kind of like a format to input as a value. And if this attribute used for the input, you can let the user know that their input is invalid by using the CSS like this. You don't even need to use JavaScript to check the value and compare with the pattern. You can use just the HTML attribute like that before, and then just use this one, and then you will have something like this. So the form will be highlighted with a red color border, and then also there is some kind of like a tooltip that let you know that the format is not valid. So, but then please let the user what the right format. If you only let them know like this, they not really sure like what kind of a format that required for the password. And then we can also suggest them to faster sign in with re-authentication. So imagine like something like this. So when the user, you ask them to sign up with create a password, or you send them a magic link to their email, and then they sign up already in your website, but then you want to ask them like, hey, do you want to easily sign in faster without need do the same thing like before? You can enable something like this. So there's an API called web.authn, or we basically it's a web authentication. So if you talking about identity management, this is how you can secure an account. So to secure an account, there are three things that you can provide or you can ask from the users. So usually the user will have what they know, or usually this is a password, and they have their phone, the one that they are using to sign into your website, and also they have themselves, like their face, their fingerprint, and this is what we call as a biometric. So you can use to sign up, you ask them to create the password, but to able authenticate them faster, you can ask them to use their phone and also combination with the biometric. Because as you know, if you register your finger or your face with your phone, means your data are registered on that device. And you can ask the device just to verify that you are the same person with the one that signed up before. And this is will be easier because then the user doesn't need to think like send the link to my account again to authenticate myself. They just need to verify using the fingerprint or their face unlock. And also, please consider these things. If you build e-commerce website, never ask or store the payment data without two-factor authentication, because payment is very very sensitive, and there's a really big risk if you not protect user with two-factor authentication. Two-factor authentication, basically you need to ask them sign in twice with two things they have. So if you ask the user sign in with their password, there's a potential that the user or the get stolen their phone, or maybe their password basically leak somewhere. But then you can verify if the user basically the same person by sending the OTP, for example, to their phone. Because using two-layer protection like this, it will be more secure compared with only with the password protection. So with this, it will be harder for the thief or other people who want to steal away their account, or maybe use the payment info that not belong to them. If you want to really want secure stuff, this is usually used by enterprise, by company to protect the corporate account. So for example, in Google, we use this kind of stuff in our desktop or our laptop. So it means I cannot sign in other laptop without this key plugged into my laptop. So with this, it will be guaranteed that your account only access in the specific device that already registered before using this thing. The last thing, I think this is a really something that I really like. So if you ask the user before to store their password with the credential manager inside the browser, you can use the credential management API to auto sign in the user. Because sometimes some website basically they maybe they clear their cache and then all the cookies. It basically you will lose the session easily. And these days I think the session always shorter because it will be secure. But then input sign in the form again and again, it's something like really painful. So if you able to ask them, provide them a way to store their password in the browser, and then you can use that one to automatically sign in the user without need input the form, just like this, as you see on the screen. So this is the thing that after we able to ask them sign in into our website, we want to make sure also the user able to check out smoothly. We already learned a lot of things about what the best practices to provide the form and easily to input by the users. So if you adopt those kind of best practice with the checkout form that you have, that will be amazing. But then we still have something we can do with the checkout form. As you know, checkout form basically have these two things to input. So you provide the shipping info for the physical goods, not for the digital goods, and you provide the payment info. The traditional way to do this checkout process, you build two forms, one for the shipping form and second one for the payment form. But the modern way to do these things is using something like this. So if you provide a checkout form like this, you can easily replace the traditional way that we already have before by using some kind like these things. So remember, if you have a checkout form and you ask something data like a payment, please always use the autofill because it will be super helpful. Be careful about this kind of stuff. If you enable the autocomplete in the form, there is a potential issue if you use also the autocomplete with the JavaScript. So as you see in the screen, you ask the user to autocomplete the country data, but then you have the autocomplete attribute as well to autofill that one. So be careful with this because this kind of stuff usually break each other. So if you build a custom input field, consider still use this kind of stuff. So if you want to provide something that similar like before, consider to adopt the standard way to provide autocomplete like this. Because with this, then the browser will understand that you want to do autocomplete. So it won't overlay the things like before, and then basically break the way the form working. And this is also how you can input the credit card. So if you use the autocomplete attribute for the payment form, you can easily use these things. And also, I think I find out there is a way, I think in Safari. So if you use the autocomplete CC number, there's a website that allow you to scan the credit card instead of input it manually. So you don't, they using some kind of like text recognition things and allow you to input this thing only if you enable the autocomplete with this CC number. But if you want to provide the easiest one again, there's a modern API that we already have. So to replace the checkout form, you can use the payment request API, and it will be looks like this. So payment request basically a way to standardize the checkout form. So no matter what kind of website you are using to having the e-commerce transaction, you will see the same checkout form like this. Of course, it will be fallback to your traditional form if the browser not support this API. So you still need to provide a traditional checkout form, but still consider to use this one if the browser support it by enable the payment request API. So you don't need to, input the data. You only need to select what kind of a payment you want to use and which address you want to use as well for the transaction. And then for the payment, you can use also the same new API. We call it this one a payment handler. So if you have like a payment processing like this, consider use payment handler because the traditional way usually use iframe or they use redirect things. But then whenever you redirect user to other websites, sometimes the redirect process is not completely able to return you to the your own website, because it's break in the way it's redirect between each website. But using the payment method like this, you will have some kind of like a dialogue that if you close or something happen, it will return you to the same website again, like this. And if you use it together, basically you will have this kind of experience. You just need to select what kind of which one that you want to use for the transaction, and it will be help the user to authorize without input all the data, because the data basically are stored inside the browser, and you can use for all the website that you that support this API. Wrap up. First, the first rule about the UX is more about don't ask too much data. The less friction you have, the easiest way for the user to complete the goal, it will be help the user to not distract or get away from the goal that you set before. In this case, for e-commerce, means we want the user to do transaction. So don't give too much friction for the user before they get into transaction. And consider to use the input attribute instead of using JavaScript to do several functions on your form, because with the input attribute, you can provide a lot of functionality for your form. And it will be work on all browsers, including in the screen reader as well. And please use the semantic HTML. It will be good for the screen reader, for accessibility, and also focus on the basic form. Try to make your basic form work first, and then you can enhance the form with the JavaScript if you want. And then don't let the user input the data all manually, because we have already the autocomplete attribute, and also consider to use the modern payment API to allow user do the transaction faster. So I think that's all from me. Whenever you wanna read about the whole things there, just go to the web.dev. There's article over there talking about the best practice and stuff. And also, if you want to ask questions anytime outside this event, you can reach me on Twitter with @Yohan. So what if the same customer use the e-commerce site frequently and doesn't sign up? Doesn't this require a higher amount of time and space for them to process the request? So please consider that the user, even they not sign up, but the data that they have or required to input for the checkout might be already stored with their own browser. So means even they not sign up, if they have the data inside the browser and you enable the autocomplete attribute inside your input field, means they able to check out faster, because they just need to select the data and that's it. So you don't need to, basically even they not sign up, they just need to authorize to use the data from the browser with the autocomplete attribute. Means still faster, even they don't sign up, right? So how we can make sure the website fits all the Android device? So usually if we talking about build responsive website, we need to set our targeting device. And if we're talking about layout, means we're talking about screen size. So if we want to consider, want to make sure our website work on all targeting devices, just targeting the smallest one. So if you can make your website work on the smallest one, it will be easier for you to make the website work on the bigger one. Because shrink the layout into the smaller one will be harder than shrink up. So just targeting the smaller one first, and then it will be guarantee your website will be work on all screens as well.
And I know that in Chrome DevTools, you can choose a lot of different screen sizes as well.
Yes.
And just test there.
Yeah, you can just switch over there and just make sure. And that's the thing I mentioned before on the Chrome DevTool. Even the Chrome DevTool provide you a way to test your website with the screen, but then the Chrome DevTool not provide you a way to test the keyboard. So the keyboard basically could be an issue and hide your element. inside your screen.
Right, because it doesn't show up, right?
Yeah. So make sure you test on your real device, and you can debug with the Chrome Remote debugging tool. Just set into Nexus 5X in Chrome DevTool. Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, that's a good one. But then make sure the targeting device that you have has the same screen size with the Nexus 5X, just to make sure. A few months ago, Tobidia got hacked by some people, and they found millions of users validating about decision how we can make a website more secure. So this is what I think. I always consider a website will be always got hacked, because whenever I sign in into a website, I consider uh, there is no way this website will be always safe. So that's why first I always create my password with a password manager. I personally use the LastPass because they have a very good integration. So the first thing you can do, always have unique password for each website that you sign up. That's the first thing. Second, protect your account with two-factor authentication, especially on the e-commerce. Never not set up a two-factor authentication on e-commerce. Third, whenever you input your payment data and you like to have a faster transaction, by allow the e-commerce to use your payment info and then just check out under your authorization, make sure you check what kind of a verification or authorization that need from you before complete the transaction. For example, there's some website that allow you the credit card, and it won't allow a website to do a transaction without these numbers. Means it still need my verification. So still have your control, even you already provide your payment, but all transactions supposed to be under your authorization. Whenever you see the website already adopt these things, so it's your choice. But for me personally, I never see any website always guarantee never got hacked. So